Hey, LinkedIn, and welcome to Business Unusual. I'm Callie Schweitzer, Senior Editor at LinkedIn News, where I cover the marketing industry. Caroline Fairchild is out today. It's September 8th, and here's a quick look at the top stories professionals are talking about today. High fashion is flocking to TikTok. Luxury brands like Gucci, Dior, and Balenciaga are trying to harness the app's potential as fashion weeks around the world begin amidst a pandemic. Gucci's Model Challenge garnered over 12 million views, and Louis Vuitton joined the app shortly after. Work from home is causing unexpected tension among coworkers. As major tech companies implement new benefits for working parents, childless employees are saying they're left to lift a heavier load. Some Facebook employees have publicly complained, saying the company seems less concerned about their needs because they don't have children. And a new study shows a record number of young adults are back at home. According to the Pew Research Center, 52% of young adults are living with at least one parent. That translates to 26.6 million kids, up from 2.6 million in February. For more stories like this, check out the LinkedIn News module to the right of your news feed on your desktop or on mobile by clicking into your search box. COVID has forced many of us to find new ways to entertain ourselves. Puzzles and board games have been a classic go-to. Less classic, but surging in demand since quarantine is the card game Exploding Kittens. Exploding Kittens is a highly strategic, cat-inspired version of Russian roulette. The game was one of the most funded games on Kickstarter and has taken living rooms around the world by storm. And with us today is Elon Lee, CEO and co-creator of the hit tabletop game company behind Exploding Kittens, Throw Burrito, and Poetry for Neanderthals. Welcome, Elon.
Hi, Cassie. Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much for being here. So let's start.
I should even, Callie, I misspoke. Hi, Callie. Thanks for having me. Let's try that again.
Of course. So glad you're here. So let's start with the inspiration for this company, which launched with the game Exploding Kittens. Tell us about that.
Yeah. So Exploding Kittens is a partnership between myself and Matthew Inman, who writes and created the Oatmeal, one of the most popular, famous online comics in the world. My background is in video games. I worked at the Xbox for a really long time, and the two of us got together and decided maybe it's time to create something that takes people away from screens a little bit. And we decided to try a tabletop game, and I designed most of the core mechanics with a friend of mine, Shane Small. Matt did all the artwork. We all kind of came together and added in our little pieces and decided the world might be ready for something a little bit less digital, something that lets us celebrate the people in our houses a bit more than a screen.
And how has the company expanded over the last few years? You now have several games as part of the Exploding Kittens portfolio.
Yeah, we got a bunch of games out there. It's been, the first year was just Exploding Kittens. We put it up on Kickstarter, not really expecting much. Our goal was to raise $10,000 to maybe put out a few hundred copies of the game. And it was so successful and so popular that year two, we decided to put out another game, and year three, another game. And now we're up to 3 games a year. Our most recent two, I should say, because they're two of my favorites, are Throw Burrito, which is what happens when you mix dodgeball with a card game, and our absolute latest one called Poetry for Neanderthals. And it's our new favorite word game and something so much fun to play and talk about.
So you've seen a massive spike in sales during the pandemic, but all of your games were initially tabletop games. So how have you pivoted to adapt to a virtual world? Tell us about Quarantined Kittens.
Yeah, so the world, of course, has changed, and we've had to really look at it from 3 different perspectives. Number 1 is face-to-face, number 2 is face-to-screen, and number 3 is pure digital. Face-to-face, the quarantine has been very unusual for us. Demand has skyrocketed, right? Everyone's stuck in their houses. They want to play games. They want Exploding Kittens, they want poetry. We are there to supply that demand. The problem, of course, is that same pandemic has just decimated our ability to create games. Our supply chain is in ruins. It's so hard to produce things. It's so hard to ship things. It's so hard to distribute things. So we've really had to not only solve that problem, figure out ways to get the games produced and into customers' hands, but every solution we come up with falls apart every day, because the situation is changing so quickly. So not only do we have to solve those problems, we have to resolve them every week, or at least once, twice a month. And that's been really, really challenging for us. I could talk for hours about the supply chain and logistics solutions we've come up with, but that's probably the driest part of our business. It just happens to be the most important part right now. The second thing is, how do you play games face to screen? Because that's a brand new category that's gaining in popularity and importance right now. And that's where something called Quarantined Kittens comes into play. We took Exploding Kittens and we said, all right, so the reality is you are not in the same room as the people you want to play with. Yes, you're quarantined with your family, but you want to play with your best friend who's in a different house, your great uncle who lives on the other side of the world. And we've all adopted things like video chat to communicate. So we wrote a brand new version for free of Exploding Kittens, and we put it up online called Quarantined Kittens. And what it lets you do is play a version of Exploding Kittens with anyone over video chat. And the only requirement is that each person has a deck of cards. It's a really complicated problem that at first we didn't even think was solvable, right? Imagine a card game. Here's a deck of cards. We're each going to draw from that pile. But if we're in different rooms, how do you draw from that deck? How do you make sure the deck stays in sync? If we each have our own draw pile, how do you make sure we understand and communicate what's going on? I know what you drew and vice versa, and the deck understands what's missing. So at first, we really didn't think that was even something that we could solve, because certainly no one else had. And then we got together with a bunch of really smart friends and play tested for weeks and figured out a clever solution, named it Quarantine Kittens, put it up online for free. And hopefully that will scratch that itch that a lot of people are having as far as how do you play games with people who are remote. And then the third solution, digital. So we do have an Exploding Kittens app out there if you want to play purely digital, which is fun and interesting, but of course you lose that fun face-to-face interaction that we're all craving so much right now.
Mm-hmm. So I want to make sure we give a shout out to the members joining us. Michelle from Tennessee, Joyce from New Jersey, Angelica from California, Alex from Nebraska, and Kelly from Florida. Be sure to leave your questions for Elon in the comments. So Elon, before the show started, we were talking about testing games and how that has changed from pre-COVID to now post-COVID, and really the safety precautions you've had to take around it. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so testing tabletop games is vital for their success. In the world of video games, where I was kind of brought up and trained, you put out a game, you test it as best you can, you put it out there, and as people play it, you learn a lot about where the holes are, where the bugs are, and you patch the game on the fly. In tabletop, you do not have that luxury. The version you put out on day one is, for most people, the only version they will ever experience. All of its bugs, all of the warts, like, that's what you're stuck with. So you better make sure that that version is as good as possible. Normally, the solution is we all hang out in a room, we test the game every day, multiple times a day. And we learn and we make tweaks, and we take a card and we tear it up. That one's no good, and we keep going. And we take another card and we scribble on it to change the rules, and we keep going. And you iterate and you iterate and you iterate. And that multi-month process is the testing procedure for a game that makes a game as good as it can, again, because you only get one shot at it. Now we're all stuck in our own homes, and testing is so complicated, because when you're trying to test a game over video chat or a virtual world, we have a bunch of kind of virtual tabletop simulators that we use, you're missing the face-to-face. If you're playing a bluffing game, imagine you're playing poker with a friend. If you can't see their face and you're not looking for those tells properly, or not perceiving or picking up on the tells coming through, so much of that game is lost. And that's exactly the same with a lot of tabletop games. When you do something to betray someone's trust, you want to see that reaction. When you win, you want people to see you celebrate your victory. All of this All of those things are missing. All that subtlety is gone. So what we've had to do instead, one, is build virtual rooms and create virtual avatars for our entire team and our whole testing, our big testing network, so that we can play games virtually. It's not the same, but it's kind of what we have. The other solution that we're starting to put in place now is renting out facilities in multiple cities around the country and sanitizing the hell out of them, and then going in there with people that we've already done contact tracing on, making sure everyone's safe, everyone's not been in contact with others for at least 2 weeks, and then go in there and play with masks. Not great. So much of the face is missing. So much of the things you want to see and react to and laugh with and celebrate with is missing behind the mask. But right now, that's kind of the best thing we've got. And so we use that quite a bit. And then finally, we send out testing kits to families in quarantine all the time. And all we ask in return is if you receive one of our games, videotape it, like send us the tape. We want to see what that testing procedure looked like, if you had fun, more importantly, if you didn't have fun, where the thing broke and how we can fix it.
So that taps into a member question, which is Melanie from California asks, from a marketing perspective, how are you reaching people who aren't playing games right now?
Yeah, so marketing is, in some senses, much, much harder because all the normal channels we have suddenly disappeared. Normally, one of our main marketing outlets is conferences, is showing up at gaming conventions and conferences, demoing our games, entertaining people, showing them the best time we can, so that that word of mouth starts to spread. So much so that earlier this year, we were supposed to have our own convention. We rented out the Portland Convention Center. We were going to fill it with a few thousand of our favorite people and play games for an entire weekend. We called it Burning Cat. And unfortunately, heartbreakingly, that, of course, is not going to happen in 2020. So we've had to look towards a lot more traditional marketing. The good news is people are in front of screens a lot right now, which means we have to get really good at figuring out who are the appropriate people, what kind of message to put in front of them, and how to make it relevant. We don't make typical ads. We want to show you that our games scratch a very particular itch. We like to say that we don't make entertaining games. We make games that make the people you're playing with entertaining. Mm-hmm. And delivering that message right now is kind of more important than ever before.
Mm-hmm. LinkedIn member Sarah asks in the stream, are you looking at experimenting with board games and AI gameplay? This is another question that Elliot had also asked about VR and AR and how they fit into your plans.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the principle of VR and AR. I'll start at the end and then we'll go to board games. But I have yet to see any virtual experience that is not isolating. I have all the systems. It's ridiculous. I'm so interested in it. I worked on a bunch of both VR and AR projects when I worked at Microsoft. But a person in a room wearing a headset is entertaining for that person. And all the other people in the room are staring at them like they're either a strange alien being or that they don't exist at all. And they're having private conversations. That is the opposite of the kind of entertainment I'm most interested in creating. And so I will continue to explore that space, but I think we're a very, very long way off before it becomes appropriate for celebrating the people in the room with you, which is my absolute minimum bar for adopting a new technology. As far as board games go, we are absolutely exploring board games. We've done a number of card games. We are just in a few months, we're going to release a brand new game called A Game of Cat and Mouth. And it is a 2-player board game, pinball meets slingshots, crazy, insane, probably break a lot of furniture in your house sort of game that I can't wait to talk more about, but we have to wait just a few more months until we're really allowed to pull the curtain off that one.
So, cat and mouth reminds me of your branding, which is very unique. Poetry for Neanderthals, throw burrito. Tell us about how you go about naming a game.
Our secret weapon is Matthew Inman, my co-founder and partner. So as a reminder, Matt created The Oatmeal, the online comic, and he is by far the funniest and most creative person I have ever met in my life. And while I'm okay, at least, at creating hopefully fun experiences, Matt is absolute best in class at branding and polishing those experiences. And so, to a large extent, what I do is go to Matt and say, hey, play this game with me. I think you're going to have a lot of fun. And we play it, and hopefully he does have a lot of fun. And at the end of that process, he comes out the other end saying, you know what we ought to name this thing? Exploding Kittens.
That's awesome. I want to bring in some comments from our stream as well. Amber says, this stuff is amazing and free is great, very inclusive. Non-digital is very important. Kids need board games. This is very different for family time and learning many different skills. Liliana adds, I can imagine my 5 grandsons around the world in a competition with each other. So one question that member Jen has is about the future of the gaming industry and where you see that going in terms of both tabletop, but also VR, AR, etc.
Yeah. Well, we're definitely seeing a renaissance in tabletop games right now. And I think we watched the pendulum swing probably too far towards the digital side. The whole reason I got into this was one day going over to my brother's house, and he has 2 young kids, my niece and nephew. And I walked in, and they were both staring at the screen, at a giant TV playing a video game. And I walked in and I said hi, and they didn't even look up, didn't say hi, didn't even acknowledge my existence. And the real kicker was they're playing a game that I helped work on. And it was really eye-opening for me. At the time, I was the chief design officer for the Xbox. And within 4 weeks of that experience, I resigned because that isolation, that loneliness, that idea that they might be having a great time, but they're not having that great time with the other people in the room was really bothering me. And I didn't want to contribute to that anymore. So that was the whole reason I decided to try my hand at tabletop, to try something more celebratory and joyous. And more inclusive. And it's been really good. And this trend, I think, is at least for me, it's the thing I'm most excited about when I look to the future, look 5, even 10 years out. This notion that we can start to swing the pendulum the other way, and towards we're all going to sit around a table for half an hour. We're going to put down our phones. We're going to make eye contact. We're going to enjoy each other. We're going to have conversation. We're going to form alliances and betrayals. We're going to laugh. We're going to have a shared experience that just isn't possible when we're staring at a screen. And I think we're going to see a lot more of that because I think there's tremendous value there. And I'm going to work as hard as I can to continue to create those kinds of experiences. And I think now that we're showing there's quite a business model around them, we'll see a lot of others join in.
You mentioned that shift from being chief design officer at Xbox to entrepreneurship. And if I'm remembering correctly, Exploding Kittens was originally planned to be a weekend hobby, and you started raising money for it on Kickstarter. Your goal was to raise $10,000, and you raised $8.7 million in 30 days.
Yeah.
What do you think resonated? Why did people flock to this?
Yeah, that was truly a terrifying 30 days. Like the original plan for Exploding Kittens was, we'll make a few hundred copies, we'll raise our $10,000, and we'll fulfill it out of my garage. I'll order some pizza and beers, I'll invite a bunch of friends over, and we'll just stuff boxes for a weekend. And that was a great plan when you have to do 500 copies of the game. You're going to work all weekend, but you'll get through your 500. By the end of those 30 days, we had to fulfill 700,000 orders. And that's, to quote Jaws, we're going to need a bigger boat. Not going to fit in my garage, not going to fit in my circle of friends, not going to fit in any of the facilities or resources that I have access to. And so it was that point that we decided to start a company. The reason that I think that in particular happened, that why it resonated so much, why it broke all those Kickstarter records and continues to be the most, have the highest number of backers from any crowdfunding campaign in history, is because we tried something different. The very first week of the campaign was 100% oatmeal traffic. Matt posted to all his social accounts saying, "I'm trying my hand at a board game. Here it is. Please take a look." And millions of his followers went and looked at it and made the decision either to back it or not. And that got us through week one. That got us like $2 million. Insane, right? Trying to raise 10,000, we got 2 million. At that point, we had to make a choice. Do we sit back and say, okay, we're done? Or do we try to turn that crank a little bit more and see what we can create? And so what we decided to do, I should say, at the end of that first week, we started to see our backer numbers really plummet. And that's what happens when your wave of established users come through. They make a decision, but nobody else is coming through. So we decided to change things up a little. Starting week 2, we said, look, we've made all the money we're ever going to make. We're not going to talk about money anymore. Instead, we're going to try something brand new that hopefully you've never seen on Kickstarter before. We're going to say, we want to make the game better. Here's how we're going to make the game better. And a lot of campaigns do this. They're called stretch goals. They say, look, we tried to raise $10,000. If we raise 20,000 instead, we're going to upgrade the box. 50,000, we're going to put more cards in the game. Stretch goals, right? Give us more money and everybody gets a better game. We wanted to do the same thing. We wanted to say, look, hit these goals and everybody gets a better game. But our goals have nothing to do with money. Like I said, we're not going to talk about money anymore. We don't need more money. Instead, we're going to throw the biggest party we can possibly throw and everybody's invited. So what that means is we set out a bunch of challenges, fun, silly, ridiculous challenges. An example, one of the characters in our game is called Taco Cat. Taco Cat is half taco, half cat. He's amazing. He's a palindrome, right? Taco Cat spelled backwards is still Taco Cat. We said, show us 10 pictures of a real live taco cat, whatever the hell that means to you. And people started submitting their photos. We said, if we get 10 of them, all we want is 10 of them, we will upgrade the game for everyone for free. We'll put in a bunch of more cards. We said, show us a picture of 10 Batmans in a hot tub. We said, get 100 friends and everyone put on cat ears and take a picture. We said, write poetry, make videos, do music videos. Everything we could think of that had nothing to do with money. We said, do these things for us, have fun with us, celebrate with us, because that's the whole point of this game. And we will make the game better for you for free. And over the next 3 weeks, we saw our numbers grow from 2 million to 3 million, all the way up to almost $9 million, because people wanted to talk about this. They wanted to tell their friends about this. We went from trying to get 500 backers all the way up to 220,000 people who wanted to come to our party. And so we just let them in.
So you essentially gamified the fundraising process.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah.
So how would you advise someone who's looking to start a Kickstarter or do some kind of crowdfunding for their own passion project, whether it's a side hobby or something that they're really passionate about doing full time?
Kickstarter is a really tricky thing. It's so competitive. And I would say, because I don't know everything about all the categories in Kickstarter, I know games really well, but who knows what your passion project is or what you want to start. I would say the most important thing is, because it's so competitive, that means there's a nearly infinite number of case studies for you to study. Go look at them, literally look at all of them. If you want to create a new mask to help people through COVID, if you want to put on a new theater production, if you want to make a little carrying case for a deck of cards, whatever it is, that has been done so many times on Kickstarter. Go look at all of them. And specifically, look at the updates, look at the reward tiers that they've created. What can people order? How did they do? Look at the successes, look at the failures. There's this incredible website called Kicktrack, KICKTRAQ.com. And for any campaign you put into Kicktrack, it will show you the data behind that campaign. It'll show you how much money they raised on every single day of the campaign, how many comments they got on the site for every single day, how many backers they got every single day. And if you start to do a little bit of data research and explore what they did right, how that corresponded to announcements that they made on particular days, what worked and what didn't work, you can start to craft your own campaign, taking advantage of the successes that other people have had, and most importantly, avoiding the mistakes that people have made. So many mistakes have been made, there's no reason for you to make them all over again.
So interesting. I didn't know about that website. I have to check it out.
Yeah.
I want to bring in some comments from the stream and then ask you one final question around leadership. What you said about human connection is really resonating with people. Barato says, fascinating approach, Elon. I would agree that making the people entertaining is more important, though entertaining games are good. Every person and every group of people is unique, and you never know what will make a player come alive. Amber mentions, COVID has shown us how important human interaction is. Too much screen time is bad for people of all ages for many reasons. My 25-year-old and my 21-year-old sons grew up on Grand Theft Auto and Call of Duty. So I want to shift to a question about leadership, which is something that is very important here at LinkedIn News. How have you changed your leadership style as you've gone from this very in-person world to, and where everything you do is really required to be in person, to now people being spread out all over the place? How have you thought about maintaining creativity and also keeping people motivated?
Oh, it's so much harder now. There's two things that I focus on 100% of the time now, truly. One is communication and the other is morale. Communication is just harder. We're accustomed to the Exploding Kittens office is a giant open space. Nobody has offices. Everyone sits wherever they want, and you overhear conversations, which allows you to collaborate, allows you to help, allows you to get help when you need it. All of that is gone. So we were trying so many different experiments as far as how to kind of recreate that virtually, which is all we have access to. When I was a teenager, I took a tour of a military base, and written on the wall was a quote that changed my life. It said, "What do you know? Who needs to know it? Have you told them?" And in the military sense, I'm sure you can figure out how that's applicable, but I stopped dead in my tracks and stared at that thing and sort of etched it in my brain, because it occurred to me that that is maybe the most important advice I've ever read, ever. And it applies to everything. And when we try to work through this new communication crisis, that's the exact message. Those 3 lines: what do you know? Who needs to know it? Have you told them? Those are the things we're trying to facilitate, more so than anything else. And we have constant Zoom calls. We have very, very robust Slack channels, trying to figure out how to properly categorize and organize information. We've tried things like using Discord, which is normally a gaming platform, right? But what Discord does really well is it allows you to have a peer-to-peer open audio channel. So what that means for us is, if everyone sits in a virtual office and keeps a audio channel open, if I need to go ask a question to Carly, my head of production, I can walk into her office and just start talking, and she will just hear me and she can answer, and then I can walk out. And so we're trying experiments like that. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't work, but all of it is in service of facilitating that communication. And especially on that last line, have you told them? Making sure that when you need to convey information, it's really, really easy, and that we can remove as many barriers as possible to facilitate that third line. The second thing, please go ahead.
I was just going to say, that's so fascinating. Did you have a second thing you wanted to mention?
Just morale. Morale is more important than ever before. And so we do a lot of team building exercises. We do escape rooms virtually together. We ordered lunch for everyone around the country now, around the world. Every Friday we have team trivia, where the winner of every previous week has to host the next week for the entire team. We buy dinners. We do things like cocktail making instruction. We'll hire an instructor to sit down with all of us and collectively teach us all how to make drinks or cook, or a whole bunch of different activities. And the whole idea is just to continue that closeness, that communication, and hopefully keep that morale, because it's so easy to slip into isolation and loneliness. And it would be so horribly ironic if a company whose sole purpose for existence was to remove those things from life suddenly let their own employees slip into them.
I think you have probably inspired a lot of people to try new ways to communicate and also to boost morale. Elon, I wanted to thank you so much for being here.
It's my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. Tomorrow, tune in for Netflix CEO Reed Hastings at 10 a.m. Eastern for an interview with LinkedIn editor Dan Roth on This Is Working. I'm Callie Schweitzer. Thanks so much for joining us.